Good afternoon. My aide-de-camp, Blackie, where are you? He told me it was 1,600. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been flying by. It's been that good. So thank you very much. We talked earlier about partnerships and that missions are meaningless without partnerships. And I extend that, not only to the remarks I gave last night and did the roll call on all the wonderful partnerships we enjoy. So to the AFSOC family and to its commander, a good friend who I've served with for many years, including on the peninsula in Korea, to Tony Bauernfeind and Chief Anthony Green, we welcome you. A warm, warm ATA welcome to the stage.
Well, General Minahan, ATA, thank you so much for allowing AFSOC to join and share a little bit about where we are orienting to the future fight as we move forward. And before I get into the briefing, though, I'd like to turn it over to my partner in crime here, Command Chief Green, for some opening comments.
All right, so first off, it's good to be back at ATA. Man. So this is, as a younger maintenance guy, I used to look at ATA and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And as I got to grow up in the ranks and come here as a chief and get to spend some time with some teammates and actually go see industry and get some development and get to see what's going on across not only AMC, but what we're doing for our nation. General Minahan always raises the crowd. I really enjoy the excitement, the feel that we have right now in AMC, and I really appreciate you, sir, because I'm proud to be AMC. But now, I'm that crazy little cousin, that wild, crazy cousin over here in AFSOC. But when you put us together, we make one hell of a team. And I couldn't be more proud to be here today and spend some time with you. The boss is going to talk a lot about what we're doing in AFSOC, and I hope you can see yourself in what we're doing. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, Command Chief Green, thanks so much. So for the audience, Command Chief Green thought, and I discussed how we were going to present this as we went forward. Would we go Huntley-Brinkley? Would we split it up as we went forward? And we came down with the fact that I'm going to do the briefing, and he's going to answer all the hard questions that y'all have at the end. So I thought that was a fair way to go forward on that. But no, he's going to be here to take care of me as I go through this. But as we go forward to this, we do want to share a little bit of how AFSOC is orienting to the future fight, because we've been in such close partnership over the years. And so let's start with a little video.
AFSOC is always transforming, evolving how we organize and employ our forces, as well as developing new capabilities and initiatives across the warfighting spectrum to compete and, when necessary, win in today's dynamic operating environment. But the thing which remains constant is the spirit, ingenuity, and adaptability of our air commandos. They continue to be our competitive advantage. They are the engine that drives us and our most important asset. Humans are more important than hardware. AFSOC's roots lie with our people, the legendary air commandos that drove the development of today's AFSOC. During World War II, our air commando brethren began a legacy through their creativity and flexibility, moving people and hardware deep within enemy lines to remote places without runways. The Doolittle Raiders conducted one of the most daring raids of the war, avenging the Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor by unconventionally flying Army B-25 bombers into enemy-infested territory to attack Tokyo. In Europe, the carpetbaggers learned to fly at treetop level in dangerous conditions to supply and reinforce resistance forces under the cover of night. Colonel Phil Cochran and Colonel Johnny Allison led the Chindids to legendary status through their ingenious tactics and unyielding spirit executing missions deep in Burma. After World War II, we entered the Cold War, the Korean War, and the conflict in Vietnam. Each time, our nation needed air commandos to adapt and defeat a new enemy. We learned a lot during those decades. During jungle warfare, the spirit of innovation of air commandos like Staff Sergeant Percy Vaughn led to the design and development of airborne reconnaissance systems. Tough missions like Operation Kingpin, better known as the Sante Raid, furthered experience, forged courage, and proved the grit of air commandos. In 1980, during the Iranian hostage rescue attempt, The failure of Operation Eagle Claw showed the resiliency of the Air Commando. It fueled imagination, leading to the creation of a military transport short takeoff and landing aircraft, which evolved into the MC-130H Combat Talon II, and the later development of the CV-22 Osprey, a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that could carry troops at speed. By 1987, seeds planted by Operation Eagle Claw grew into the establishment of United States Special Operations Command. Shortly after, the power of the Air Commandos was on full display in the invasion of Panama, where the gunships owned the sky and Special Operations Forces owned the ground. On May 22, 1990, Air Force Special Operations Command was officially born through the redesignation of the 23rd Air Force. It was only a short 3 months later, AFSOC was called upon to show the reason for which it was formed. Iraq invaded Kuwait, and Air Commandos joined the fight in Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. On September 11, 2001, terrorists attacked on American soil, killing thousands of U.S. citizens and beginning a war in which Special Operations would lead the way. Through Operation Enduring Freedom, AFSOC took the fight to the enemy. In 2002, Tech Sergeant John Chapman embodied this fight when he sacrificed his own life, subduing the enemy long enough to save the lives of his brethren. His actions would lead to being awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor in 2018. Through the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, Air Commandos were among the first ones in and the last ones out. These stories, these people, are AFSOC's roots. In recent years, our nation has entered a new era of competition. We will continue to adapt and transform to remain the most capable, most lethal Air Force in the world. We know change is difficult, but irrelevance or losing is worse. We have a proud history and heritage of transformation to meet mission requirements. We stand on the shoulders of giants that paved the way for us, and we too will rise to ensure our nation's security. Today's Air Commandos are tomorrow's legends.
So that's a little bit about who we are, and acknowledging that we're standing on the shoulders of giants that have paved the way for us. It's important for us to now chart our way forward as a command. And as we discuss this with y'all today, we're going to talk a little bit about how we appreciate the strategic environment, but then focus on the changes we're making on our most important asset, our competitive advantage, our people. Then also acknowledging that we're reorganizing for this fight, and then how we're pathfinding for tomorrow from within Special Operations Command. But starting with the strategic environment, the fact that it's necessitating change in AFSOC. General Schleif saw this back when he was commander of Air Force Special Operations Command, and he published guidance in 2020 that initiated this transformation in AFSOC, how we force generate, how we force present, and how we start to pathfind for the future. But some things have changed since 2020. An appreciation that the countering violent extremist organizations fight will continue, as we have all seen just a month ago, where there are still organizations that wish to do our nation and our allies and our national interest harm. So we have to sustain our efforts in the counter-VEO fight. Also acknowledging the uptick in global crisis that I know AMC sees every single day. If we look back from 2001 to 2014, we had approximately, let's call it just over 10 global crises that we had to respond to for those short-term duration events. Since 2014 to present day, that number has tripled in scale, showing the geopolitical environment is becoming more unstable and how our Department of Defense needs us to be able to respond. And to acknowledge that was also identified in the 2018 NDS, the rise of great powers, and how we are going to transform to not only be able to address counter-VEO, global crises, but how we're going to return to our roots in special operations and get after this great power competition as it moves forward. At the same time, in 2022, we received new guidance that made it very clear that we now have a pacing challenge and that we are going to align ourselves to be able to make sure that those adversaries know that we are prepared to deter them as they move forward. But underlying all of this is an acknowledgement as well is the pressures that all of us are facing. The fiscal pressures are increasing. With the Fiscal Responsibility Act and the growth of inflation, our buying power is decreasing significantly. And we're all feeling the impact of the shortfall in recruiting in our nation, and that is coming into our formations. But the biggest pressure is time. The time that we need to make sure that we transform to be that strategic deterrent, but also the time we need to train our forces for the new skills they'll need in this future fight. And all of this has led us to republish our strategic guidance at AFSOC just this year with the acknowledgement that the changing strategic and fiscal environment is requiring us to accelerate the transformation to meet the demands of the Global Combatant Commanders, the Theater Air Components, and the Theater Special Operations Commands. An acknowledgement that Special Operations is comfortable in the supporting role so that we can solve bigger joint force problems across the spectrum of conflict, whether that be in counter-VEO, crisis, short-term operations, competition through integrated deterrence, and should that fail, being ready to go into high-end conflict to deliver the decisive effects our joint force needs to hold our adversaries at bay. And that is the strategic environment from which we are underpinning our transformation. And the most important transformation is going to be through our people, our competitive advantage, our air commandos. And the first thing is acknowledging that we have a shortfall of teammates coming into our great Air Force. And while General Robinson has the responsibility for recruiting, we at AFSOC can be a good teammate and start to share our story to excite young Americans to join our great service. And as such, we have stood up an outreach squadron to do just that, with an acknowledgement that of the approximately 4 million young Americans that are physically and mentally able to serve our nation, only 9% have a propensity to serve. And if it's only 9%, I'm not going to try to target the 4 million. We're going to try to target that 9 million and get young Americans excited with the missions that we're doing in AFSOC. We're also going to connect to communities that we have not connected with in the past. And all underpinning all of this is a tight relationship with the Air Force Recruiting Service, so when we find those teammates that want to join, get that hot handoff into our great service. But once we get there, we also have to change the way we have trained ourselves. We had convinced ourselves in AFSOC that we needed fully mission-qualified personnel due to the high deployment rates. People were coming out of AETC and immediately deploying within 30 days. We have the luxury with decreased deployments at this time, as well as a force generation construct that allows us to return to the 90s, where we focus on being basic mission qualified, and when you get to your operational unit, you will get those special qualifications you need to become fully qualified. And that ensures that you're getting that operational culture inside your first operational unit, you're getting a better understanding how to take on high-end warfare, and you're able to upgrade at a time and pace of your skill. And so we're moving out arm in arm with General Robinson's team to decrease all initial qualification training by 50%, and we're moving out on that. We're moving out on TSIC Direct to AFSOC FTU. But we're not doing this without an appreciation of risk. We're also making sure that all of our CAT-D simulators are at every one of our locations so that those operational squadrons can conduct that training not only in the simulators, but in the iron. To the iron aspect, we're increasing our flying hour program. Last year alone, we increased by over 25%. And we're also investing heavily in extended reality, virtual reality, and augmented reality so that we can take on and prepare ourselves for that training that's going to be required in the ops squadrons as we move forward. And then the final aspect, we're looking at what the squadron of the future looks like. An acknowledgement that as we will conduct more of that training inside the squadron, we will probably need some additional instructors. But we're moving forward on that because at the end of the day, we can no longer afford to have our teammates pinning on captain inside the initial training pipelines. We need them to get to their operational units before they're pinning on first lieutenant. We're also investing heavily in air commando development from two perspectives, leadership and deployment development. So for the deployment development, we have stood up the Air Commando Development Center. And this 06 level headquarters is designed for all deploying personnel to run them through the paces of being part of a Special Operations Task Unit, task group, or joint task force. In other words, to go through the exercises and the hard training they'll need for the deployments in front of them. And on the leadership front, the Air Commando Development Center is our center point for how we assess and select our squadron commanders. Whether we're going through 360-degree peer surveys, grading of records, interviews with operational psychologists, we are able to better understand our teammates' strengths and weaknesses, and all of this is done with all senior raters in the room so that we can play these officers against their strengths and provide the coaching and mentoring they need to address their weaknesses. And for personnel that are not selected through our Commando Eagle process, we're providing a year of coaching and mentoring so they're more successful in their next opportunity to command. And it's important because it's all about our air commandos. The next thing that we're working on is how we assess ourselves. We discussed how we're deploying forward as Special Operations Task Units, Special Operations Task Groups, or JTFs. And that's having a formalized certification, verification, and validation process. Bluntly put, 10 years ago, AFSOC would receive a deployment order and we would just move down range without any preparation for the mission in front of us. We just assumed we were ready. By having the Air Commando Development Center set up that hard training and those hard exercises, and that certification, verification, and validation occurring at echelon, all the way from wing commander to my level, to making sure that our deployed forces are ready for the mission that they're being tasked for the joint force. But we're also taking a look at how do we assess ourselves for high-end warfare. And we are looking at returning to operational readiness inspections, because that is the pathway where we can take our wings and fight them in the most stressing O plan to prepare them as they go forward. More to follow as we work through that planning effort. And it's all to how we present our force to the joint team. And as discussed, we are force presenting joint task forces. We have an 06 as we speak right now commanding Army, Navy, Air Force, Special Operations Forces in a deployed environment, and we are delivering that 24/7, 365, because we can force present within our formation to do that. We are also force presenting Special Operations Task Groups. That's the 05 echelon. If you think more of an expeditionary group that has all of AFSOC's capabilities in it, soft mobility, soft strike, soft ISR, or soft air-to-ground integration, with command teams that understand the 7 joint warfighting functions and how to fight those elements as it goes forward. But underpinning most of this is that MST at the bottom. We had an acknowledgement that we did not have the ability inside of AFSOC for agile combat employment. We always relied on the joint force to provide that for us. We are now executing those mission sustainment teams and force presenting those so that those special operations task groups can be light, lean, and move around theater to generate air power, and should an adversary respond, collapse and move on to the next location to keep generating that air power. And those mission sustainment teams are proven to be game-changing for how we're going to operate in the future environment. And this is how we are transforming ourselves on the people front at AFSOC. But now we also looked at ourselves from an organizational perspective. And from an organizational perspective, when we look at our 6 active duty wings in Air Force Special Operations Command, we acknowledge that we were not postured for the future. We had an outdated force organization. We had inconsistent alignment and relationships. We had an imbalanced posture and flexibility, with 3 of our active duty wings being at Herberg Field, right there in Hurricane Alley, and we would not be able to survive a Tyndall-like event and still be able to generate the combat power we need for all of our crisis activities. And then finally, quality of life, as all command teams are addressing. When you have all of your personnel in singular locations, it is a huge draw on the quality of life. And arrayed across the bottom are our 4 AFSOC mission areas as discussed: soft mobility, soft strike, soft ISR, and soft air-to-ground integration. And you can see from our 6 active duty wings, none of them could force present all 4 AFSOC mission areas for the Joint Force as we went forward. And that was a challenge. So as we go forward, with Secretary Kendall's recent announcement that an AFSOC wing will be going to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, we have an opportunity to change that. And so we have focused on a new force planning construct, that we must be mission-oriented instead of functionally oriented, that we have all AFSOC capabilities in each of our power projection wings, that we have to be theater-focused with that long stare. And so inside of each of these power projection wings, we are creating what is called a Theater Air Operations Squadron that will have dedicated intel professionals doing that long stare on geographic combatant command problem areas. We will have those multi-domain operators that can bring greater Department of the Air Force capabilities to bear, like cyber, space, information operations, and public affairs. We will also have our air advisors in this squadron that will be able to establish those long-term relationships with those allies and partners that are a priority for our geographic combatant commands, theater air components, or our theater special operations command commanders. And so as we are moving forward, we are transitioning all 6 of our active duty wings into power projection wings, and we'll be working on that over the next few years with the move to Davis-Monthan. People, organization, but now what else are we doing to pathfind for the future? Pathfind for tomorrow, excuse me. The biggest one, in my opinion, is we're doubling down on allies and partners. Secretary Austin said it best recently, and he said, the big bet is on our allies and partners. And we have seen that multiple times, and we have seen dictatorships invade friendly nations. And to be surprised by allies and partners linking arms strongly and providing that unified front. So at AFSOC, we are increasing the number of exchange programs that we're going to partner in. We're going to increase the number of ally and partner officers in our headquarters. We're increasing the number of exercises we're conducting with our allies and partners, because that is going to give us the access, the placement, and most importantly, that unified front should any of our great power adversaries choose to challenge us in the future. We're also leaning hard into transforming our special tactics team. After 9/11, our great special tactics operators pivoted hard to 100% focusing on joint terminal air control. And since that time, they have left behind many of the capabilities that they knew well in the 1990s. We are going to double down on this great force, because this great force are inherent problem solvers. And so we are going to invest heavily in their training and the equipment that they need to provide terrestrial-based problems against our adversaries around the globe. We're doing it right now across the globe, and we're going to expand upon those capabilities to make sure that we are creating those dilemmas that halt our adversaries' progression. We also have to have an acknowledgement, as I said in the strategic perspective, that the counter-VEO fight is not going away. But we have to also provide that close air support and some level of ISR over our ground forces that are in those fights against these VEOs. And as such, we're accelerating what we're doing with the Armed Overwatch platform, the OA-1 Kilo, with the goal of receiving our first aircraft in FY24 so we can begin the testing and training of that platform that'll be key to sustainable and cost-effective close air support in those arenas around the world. Think AFRICOM and CENTCOM as we move forward. And we're leaning heavily on our total force teammates to accelerate this. Our great teammates at the 137th Special Operations Wing in Oklahoma are going to be the host of the training program as this moves forward, and they have the right expertise to make sure that we can move seamlessly into this new aircraft. We're also acknowledging, especially as we look at the Indo-Pacific, that we have to return to our contested capabilities. I would offer to you that in the 1990s, AFSOC was premier in contested capabilities. But we took purposeful risk after 9/11 because we didn't need those capabilities. But we're going to return to understanding the electromagnetic spectrum better, not only with training, but with expertise and the appropriate equipment so that our air crews and our teams can operate in contested and at times denied airspaces. But we also have to acknowledge that we think that all of the airfields will be heavily targeted during these high-end conflicts. So we're working hard to develop runway agnostic capabilities, returning to old tactics, techniques, and procedures like highway landings that we've all done for years, but we're bringing those back to the forefront. We're relearning beach landings that we've used quite well in the European theater, but trying to understand now through the engineering, can we do the same thing in other theaters? But we're also getting after technology, like an MC-130 amphibious craft that can land on the surface of the ocean, or partnering with DARPA to establish the high-speed vertical takeoff and lift platform that can have an appropriate cargo compartment, but more importantly, can travel at speeds that can be a part of those force packages that are conducting those pulsed operations in the future. Very excited to see where that's going in our force. And then the next one I think is game-changing. And this is AFSOC's #1 acquisition priority. And this is adaptive airborne enterprise, as well as our enhanced precision effects. Bluntly put, it's about thickening the joint force kill web. Imagine a future where now we can provide hundreds, if not thousands, of Group 2 and Group 3 UASs that can help thicken the joint force kill web. Imagine a future with all of those sensors connected to our C2 systems with additional low-cost but en masse kinetic effects that we can deliver out of the back of our C-130s or off the rails of our C-130s, our MQ-9s, or our armed Overwatch platform. And these are the type of efforts that we're moving into quickly with our first demonstration of A2E planned for next month as we move forward. And I will just tell you, very excited to see where our team is going because, bluntly put, our air commandos are amazing, just like all the airmen through all of the commands. I am a true believer that all of this innovation occurs at the ground roots level, and if we get them the vision, and if we get them the resources, and then get the heck out of their way, our airmen and our air commandos deliver every single time. And I know that they're delivering on each 6 of these for the command. So, without further ado, one last video, and then I'll turn it over to the Command Chief to answer all the hard questions.
AFSOC is defined by our people, the Air Commandos. We took shape as part of the first Air Commando group in World War II and grew with the Chindits in Burma, the Carpetbaggers in Europe, the jungles of Vietnam, and the hard lessons of Iran. We have a rich heritage of courage, valor, and innovation. Our airmen are highly disciplined, multi-capable, action-oriented pathfinders and quiet professionals, all of which make up our title, Air Commandos. You see, it's not the aircraft, it's not the cool kits, it's what we're called to do. It's the mission, it's the people, it's the team. Regardless of specialty, it's the setting high standards and holding each other accountable. It's a mindset. That's what makes us America's Air Commandos. It's the Air Commando who is prepared to face strategic competition and ensures protection against terrorists and violent extremist organizations around the world through specialized mobility, strike capabilities, intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance, and air-ground integration options across the spectrum of competition and conflict. We thrive on taking on something new, something experimental, and making it work for mission success. It's the Air Commandos who are developing an entirely new way of deploying forces using special operations task groups, special operations task units, and mission sustainment teams made up of multi-capable airmen who can adapt to extreme environments. We conceptualized an amphibious-capable MC-130J.
We are pioneering the way for palletized effects.
Our pathfinding efforts have found a way for a ready and relevant force of future warfighters. We are AFSOC.
We are America's Air Commandos,
ready to fight tonight, pathfinding for tomorrow, and ready to bring unconventional air power any place, anytime, anywhere.
All right. Bring it.
Yes, sir. We'll do it. Sir, AFSOC trains, operates, and executes with a joint mindset. How do you think Air Mobility Command could become more joint-minded to execute rapid global employment alongside our joint brothers and sisters?
I'll let you go first, Command Chief, then I'll roll in.
So first off, I think AMC does a phenomenal job in the joint fight already. I see our joint fight right now and what we're providing for our nation. You go back and look at Mobility Guardian and what we've done, what you did over the last year is phenomenal. I think where we can work really well together is using our ability to pathfind and then amplifying that in efforts to bring that to bear for our joint force. I think that's where we work best together, utilizing some of our small team dynamics, if you would, and then being able to bring that to bear at a larger scale with AMC. I mean, we were birthed from AMC, and we have strong roots in AMC, and we work very well together. I think we just need to continue doing that.
Yeah, I mean, well said, Command Chief. I will tell you, I think AMC absolutely crushes joint interaction. You know, I tell you what, you know, as part of, you know, Transcom with the joint force, I mean, the joint force absolutely relies on AMC. We've seen what happened just a month ago. Without AMC, our ability to respond as a nation would never existed. You know, that's what global reach is all about, going back into some old aspects. And to me, that's what makes a great power, is the fact that when we have to conduct deterrence activities, it's the great airmen of Air Mobility Command that give that ability to reach out and power project globally at a time and place of our senior leaders choosing. And I will just tell you that from my perspective, AMC's got it absolutely wired. The one thing that I will offer to you that I have seen be really beneficial over the years is the more we can exercise together as NCOs and CGOs, we will build that joint trust. The more we can conduct those activities in those exercises with our Army, Navy, Marine Corps, space teammates at more junior levels, we'll start to understand each other just a little bit better. So if I was to advocate for anything, and we can help you execute this, General Manahan, but you know, doubling the exercise budget, we can help you execute that if you would like that in a joint perspective. But no, all joking aside, I think they're all over it.
Gentlemen, will AFSOC ever, or do you envision AFSOC ever having its own strategic tankers, or will they continue to rely on Air Mobility Command for that support?
I will tell you that we benefit greatly from Air Mobility Command strategic tanker fleet. I see no benefit of taking a portion of that amazing combat enabler and penny packeting it to AFSOC. The support we get from Air Mobility Command is always top notch, and so I would be cautious about trying to parse that tanker fleet up into smaller fleets, taking away the nation's flexibility. One person's opinion.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, during the briefing, you mentioned that air advisors, as a part of your new wings. The 6th SOS was redesignated, and an advising capability only exists in conventional theater and Air Mobility Command assets. Will Air Force Special Operations Command use the Expeditionary Center to train your advisors?
Yeah, I believe we will. If you look at what we're doing with our air advisors now and the TAOSs and being able to bring that to bear in theater. So we have folks that's looking at one theater for a long time, building those enduring relationships and being able to help advise them in whatever our nation needs and where we need to bring it to bear. In alignment with our TSOCs, or Geographic Combatant Commands, is important, but how we train them is extremely important. I think we will be able to utilize, or actually, let me say this back. We would benefit from utilizing the Expeditionary Center for their air advisory skills. I left the Expeditionary Center not too long ago, and I was always amazed at what the training they provided for air advisors and the MSAS unit and what they were providing. I think we would only be better if we connected those two training platforms. Go ahead, Steve.
And I concur with that. So just to give a little history, as we transition the 6th Special Operations Squadron from purely air advising one squadron focused on air advising to an MC-130J squadron, what we did is, as we have stood up the 5 theater air operations squadrons, the seed corn of those, because we're building them in flight, a big portion of that seed corn were those air advisors out of the 6th Special Operations Squadron, or out of the 6th SOS as we move forward. So we're going to keep that lineage, that heritage as it moves forward, and we would love to keep that partnership going with the Expeditionary Center because it's important that we keep moving out in that direction.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question just moved on me, so let me find it again. So the question is fairly simple. What is your number one risk, and how are you mitigating it?
I believe our biggest risk would be, as we're shifting toward focusing on a strategic competition. We still have, as the boss said earlier, we still have to focus on this CVEO and counter terrorist organizations that continue to bring or bring some challenges to us. I think the risk that we take is with our training of our force and our education of our airmen who are really trying to shift into this multi-capable domain and really not understanding themselves. So I think a lot of the challenges that we face is being able to get that message down to them of where we're going. That's why the boss is actually working really hard on where we're going as a force and what we're doing in efforts so they can see themselves in the change that's coming. So they know why they're doing the things that they're doing. I look at things like the MST. Once we get people in the MST or the mission sustainment teams, they don't want to leave. They absolutely love what they're doing. And once you get them in there and they can see the fun things that they can bring to bear, they want to stay there. But we have to keep that training up and keep the power pipeline going for our force. I think from a chief perspective, making sure we're getting the airmen the training they need to face the fight that we face.
No, thanks, man, Chief. Let me put a finer point on that. I think the greatest risk is how do we balance two of our priorities, ready to fight tonight and pathfinding for tomorrow. It's really how we as command teams are balancing that for our force. I've already said my belief that our airmen are absolutely amazing. We give them the vision and the resources and get out of their way, they will deliver amazing things for us. But we've also got to make sure that when we have to respond to things like that are occurring in the Middle East, that we're ready to do that in a time that meets the nation's requirements. And so balancing that as command teams is key as we go forward and making sure we're having those constant discussions with our command teams and our air commandos that we're balancing that. But we're also in the ready to fight tonight is we're putting our money where our mouth is. Increasing flying hour program by 25%, increasing exercise program by 54 million, increasing the number of XR, VR, AR, as well as CAT-D simulators. Those are the type of things that we have to put in the hands of our airmen and our air commandos, ops, maintenance, combat support across the board, so they can hone their own readiness, but also building that time and space so they can get after those hard problems, they get after those visions that we were talking about.
And of course, there it is. Okay, so during your comments, you mentioned kind of not with great detail, Joint Forces application in a near-peer fight. So the following question is, The term special operations encompasses a large group of professionals with a variety of backgrounds. What makes soft air power unique, and what options will it provide the joint force in the peer fight?
You want to take a swing at that one, Command Chief?
I think I can.
Remember, we're unclassified.
Yeah, no, that's what makes it fun in this environment. Yeah, so what makes us unique is, I said it before, we're a small force. We have that small fleet dynamics, if you would, so we can bring a lot of rapid capability to bear quickly with soft funds and other funds that we were able to use to help with that, I would say, that pathfinding. What we bring to the nation and our joint force uniquely, though, is our ability for placement and access. It would be the number one thing. Our ability to use our small teams to get into place and use the, to gain that placement access and just make it routine that we're coming through there, working with other partner nations, and they see us coming there all the time. So it's just natural that we're there. And then when the nation needs us to use those areas that we've been naturally being in for a long period of time, we can actually bring our larger partners in if we need to bear. But I think that small fleet dynamics allows us to be able to get the placement and access that we need to enable the joint force in the fight.
Yeah, I would double down on that. It's working with allies and partners, gaining that placement and access, because the whole goal is in all this through integrated deterrence is to showing that unified effort with our allies and partners. That they look across their borders, their many borders, and just know that we're linked arm in arm together as we move forward. And I think that's a deterrent effect unto itself as it goes forward. I also think that we have the ability to move fast in AFSOC just because we're smaller and we have some more unique authorities. But in partnership with great teammates like Air Mobility Command, we can be the short, small, or the small, quick, pathfinding team, and then AMC can take it to the next level. AMC can scale that we can just not take on as it goes forward. And so as we look forward into those areas, I would tell you that I think it's important that we talk about how we can thicken the joint force kill web. That's exactly what we're talking about doing, whether through our MC-130s air launching or MQ-9s air launching, how we can thicken that joint force kill web. And then also how we can bring low-cost mass on munitions as it goes forward. AFSOC has demonstrated, AMC has demonstrated, we have the capabilities to deliver a lot of kinetic effects to help augment out what the joint force is doing.
And sir, the next question kind of piggybacks on your response. What are the similarities of AFSOC's mission sustainment teams and Air Mobility Command's contingency response enterprise? And how can the two entities cross-flow between exercises and operations?
Oh, I think there is a lot of similarities there. When we look at a mission sustainment team, we're looking at setting up a location so we can move that location around very quickly, shoot and scoot, if you would, and be able to support that aircraft coming in and out. When you look at the CRW, it's always, I remember working in the Expeditionary Center. The CRW was all over the place. They were constantly, and they worked as a team. I think that was, from the Air Mobility Command, that was naturally your first multi-capable airman because that's what they did. You would take a comms troop, and one day they're setting up an antenna, the next day they're driving the forklifts. That's exactly what our MST teams are doing. So they work very well together. How do we integrate in exercises? I think in the future when we're doing exercises like mobility guarding and other things, I think those build together as we're bouncing around in these small locations. I think we only need to incorporate the soft mechanisms in with our air mobility mechanisms so we can bring that to bear in our future. I think it works very well together.
I agree 100%. I do not know as much about the CRWs as Command Chief Green does, but I will tell you, I think there's a natural training opportunity as we go forward here, with the one caveat, as I understand it, the CRWs and CRGs are there to enable greater forces. As we are designing the MSTs, it's there to enable our forces. So there's a different focus on who the customer is, but I think it's the common training and the common results that we can move forward on.
I would be wrong if I didn't mention this. One thing I do like about AFSOC and Air Mobility Command is the fact that our airmen can bounce through these commands and get different levels of development. Having someone who's worked on the CRW team or in the larger force and being able to come into AFSOC and be able to bring those skills to us, we do something with them and bring them back out. I see Courtney Freeman in the crowd there. Those things like that make us better as a team. I think that cross flow of talent It needs to be natural within our two commands, and I think we need to capitalize that continually.
Gentlemen, do you believe the newly developed amphibious MC-130 could carry out patient evacuation as the first stage of the aeromedical evacuation process, especially in the Pacific Theater?
I will take that one. I will, as we go forward to prove that it's possible to do this, and this is a significant engineering challenge, I think there is a multitude of mission sets that an amphibious aircraft can take on as it goes forward. And not only are we looking at, the MC-130 amphibious craft, but we're also looking to partner with our Japanese teammates who are flying the US-2. And so how can we learn how we can bring amphibious capable aircraft forward to take care of many of the hard missions that we've just not had to take on for the last 2 decades?
And gentlemen, we have time for one more question. And there's a number of people that wanted to get your views on your current ops tempo, and how is your morale, especially in your families?
Okay, our ops tempo is different now. I would say before it was, in the last 2 decades, we were at a high level. We're still at a high level. It's different. We're not constantly deployed downrange. We're doing a lot of preparation now, at the same time responding to things going on around the world. So the tempo is still there. I would say the morale's high. There's some areas that we still got to work on. What most folks in AFSOC like about AFSOC is they come in the Air Force to do. And there's an opportunity to do things in AFSOC, and just like an Air Mobility Command. So we got to keep them. We got to keep them motivated. We got to keep them with the resources that need to move forward. And along the way, we need to take care of their families, and that's what we've been really working hard on, taking care of the families, working a lot with Congress and other local and state representatives in efforts to make the bases that we have better. And the medical support and other things like that. That's the areas that we need to continue to focus on so we can knock down those barriers for the airmen and their families so they can really focus on the mission.
Well said, Command Chief, and I'll just follow up with, I agree. I think our airmen and their families are hugely motivated. I still think we have to have constant conversations with our airmen so they can see the vision and they can know that what they are doing every single day when they come in to do the hard work, that they're moving the needle on the mission. And so Command Chief Green and I, one of our top priorities is going in is focusing in hard on quality of life and quality of mission. Quality of life being everything from childcare to housing to medical to spousal employment to traffic. I missed one. Which one? Schools, education as we go forward, but also quality of mission. You're also making sure that we're looking at promotion rates. We're looking at job satisfaction. We're understanding why people choose to change journeys as they go forward. As we focus on this. And by focusing on this, we've been able to knock down quite a few barriers. And it's important that we keep knocking those barriers down for our airmen and their families, because I truly believe our airmen, they will absolutely move mountains for us as long as they know that their family and their friends are taken care of. And so if we keep doing that, they're going to keep bringing it strong every day. And I see that the morale is high. But it's on us and command teams and frontline engaged leadership at all levels to keep knocking down those barriers for our airmen.
Gentlemen, on behalf of General Everhart and General Minahan, thank you, one, for your time, which we know is such a precious commodity, and two, for your candor. And we at the Airlift Tanker Association really appreciate you participating in our convention seminars and symposium. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.